Welcome back to What's Left podcast. It has been so long since I recorded a podcast episode, and that's mostly due to the fact that I've been healing from double jaw surgery, but that is going well, and I should be getting my braces off pretty soon here, which I'm really excited about. Today, I want to talk about cycle syncing and really being in tune with your body and your flow and your inner seasons. I posted a video on TikTok talking about this and how I live my life based on my cycle, and some people had questions, and I know that not everyone is living their life that way. So I want to talk about just my personal experience on how it led me to cycle syncing, and then some of the things that I do in my day-to-day life that really improve the quality. So the story really starts when I started my period. I was such a late bloomer in comparison to my peers. I did not start my period until I was around 16. I was a foot shorter than everyone. All the other women were, developing boobs and starting their periods and going through puberty, and I just wasn't. And so it was something that we did have questions on. Was something else going on? Am I just a late bloomer? Because that wasn't the case for my mother. She didn't it wasn't that long into her teenage years that she started, but when I did start, I was having the most excruciating experiences. Such a heavy flow, really, really bad cramps, and then of course that led me to the gynecologist, which you should be going to the gynecologist regularly anyways. But they prescribed me birth control pills, and I took those for a couple of months until I just didn't because I was an irresponsible teenager that just didn't keep up with it. And it wasn't until I was around 21 that I got an IUD. So I went to the gynecologist and I was still saying, hey, I'm having these horrible, horrible cramps and experiences, heavy periods, bleeding through like super tampons, and I was prescribed an IUD. So, unfortunately, the gynecologist that I had gone to was operating out of a Catholic hospital, so she wasn't able to actually do the inserting of the IUD herself. So, she sent me to Planned Parenthood. And if you are someone that has an IUD, you know how absolutely awful the experience is in general. So, I went to my local Planned Parenthood. I was attempting to get an IUD, but unfortunately for me, my cervix was not dilating enough, and they didn't want to puncture my cervix essentially. And they sent me to a town over to go to a different Planned Parenthood that had the pills that would actually dilate your cervix intentionally. So I went and did that, got my IUD. It was horrible, drove myself home, which was the biggest mistake that I could have ever done. No pain medication. Looking back, I'm just like, wow, what a traumatizing experience. But once everything kind of settled in, I did have a better experience with my monthly periods. I would get cramps and still need to take ibuprofen or Tylenol, but it wasn't hospitalizing me, and that was something that was really important. I was able to like actually go through my day-to-day life. But when you have an IUD, you either spot or you don't bleed at all, and so it can be difficult to track your cycle. It's not like you are just going to bleed every, however many days, which is personal to you and unique to you, but with an IUD, you just don't know. And so it really forced me to have to be in tune with my body and the rhythms of my body. If I wasn't paying attention, it would be easy to overlook. And then I'd be wondering, why am I feeling so sluggish? Why don't I want to move my body? Why am I craving carbs? I wasn't able to attach it to any sort of meaning if I wasn't paying attention. So then, fast forward, I was living in Mexico and I wanted to get my IUD taken out because I wasn't sure if my body would kind of regulate or if my cramps would be as extensive as they are, what have you. So I got my IUD taken out in Mexico, and it was a very seamless experience with the doctor that I had gone to. It took like 2 seconds and she took it right out, no pain medication necessary. But when my body regulated over the course of the next 6 months or so, the excruciating cramps came back. And that kind of just told me, okay, this isn't something that went away. The IUD was really just a band-aid, and I wanted to explore options that I could actually get to the root issue of what was going on with me. But unfortunately, so many women go misdiagnosed with things like endometriosis or PCOS or, hormone dysregularities, and I was pushing my gynecologist to want to explore those things, but unfortunately for me, she kind of recommended like, yes, we could explore these things, but right now where science lies, or at least what we had access to, is if an IUD is working for you and minimizing your symptoms, because we kind of came to the conclusion that I have endometriosis, she said it's probably best for you and your quality of life to just have the IUD. If you're not having negative side effects of the IUD, and it's actually alleviating some of your symptoms, why not continue to do it? If it's not broke, don't fix it. And it's discouraging to know that that is really the only option for some women who are struggling with these things that do interact and negatively impact their everyday life. But for me, I decided, you know what? Okay, yes, I did have a better experience when I had my IUD. So I currently do have an IUD, and I have to make it a point to stay in my flow, stay in my cycle. I do track my cycle, and it's give or take. It's not actually down to the day, but I know generally speaking where I am in my inner seasons. So, of course, we have menstruation, your follicular phase, ovulation, and then your luteal phase. And for me, I obviously can notice when I'm in my follicular and ovulation phase, I'm feeling absolutely incredible. I have so much energy. That's really when most of my creative ideas are just flowing. It almost feels like they don't stop flowing. It's like a fire hose, and I have to just jot down all of the ideas that I have. And these are the phases, at least for me, my follicular and ovulation phase, that it's action seasons. These are times that I'm actually putting my ideas into action. I'm taking steps forward to manifest them into the tangible world. So not only am I having all of these creative ideas, but I'm also putting them into practice. Because for me, as somebody who idolizes and romanticizes ideas, the executive function of it all is where I get stuck. So I really try my best during my follicular and ovulation phases to put in the effort to take action. And I notice that when I do that, even more of my ideas start to flow, and I really just feel like it's a well of information. It makes me think of the book Big Magic, and I've been seeing so many TikToks of people talking about ideas and big magic and how things manifest in our lives. And for me, if you haven't read the book Big Magic, it essentially is talking about the idea that when an idea comes to you, it has chosen you as its vessel, and it is your responsibility to bring that idea into the physical world. It makes me think of Michael Jackson and him thinking of a song and then immediately going to the studio no matter what time of night. Could be 4 a.m., could be 1 a.m., could be any time of day. He would go to the studio and record because he thought that Prince was going to steal his ideas. And it kind of is in that same concept of if you do not bring an idea forward, then it is going to go find a home somewhere else. So I think about it so often. I've had so many ideas over the 30 years of my existence, and there are ones that I, haven't been able to bring into the physical reality, or I have chosen to pursue other ideas, and then I will see somebody doing it instead. And I'm like, oh wow, that was my idea, but was it really my idea, or was it just my responsibility to bring it to life? And I didn't, and its idea found its way to the world through someone else. So using the inner spring and inner summer to bring those things actually into reality, because as you know, when you're in your luteal and menstrual phase, you're not wanting to do those things. You're having more self-reflection, you're slowing down, you're resting, you're not really feeling super social. And that was something when I was launching my book club Self-Centered is mostly during my follicular and ovulation phase, I was going out, talking to people, I was inviting people, I was really doing what I could to be super aligned with the energy that I was already feeling. And then it felt natural. Like I remember I was bringing flyers to some of the local businesses because a lot of the local businesses in the town that I'm in are woman owned. And I think that that's absolutely incredible because Self Centered is obviously for and about women and femmes. And I would go in and I would just get to chatting with these women, and I just felt so open and excited not only about this project that I was working on, this community and container that I was building for women so that we can empower one another, but it felt like a drug to be connecting with other people, which is almost the complete opposite of how I feel when I'm in my luteal and menstrual phases. I like to be alone. I like to sit with my thoughts, rest, go slow, be with my body, which is not what I'm feeling super social. And a book that really helped me align with this way of thinking is In the Flow. I have that in my book club, and it's something that I think is really important for women to consider. It talks about a 28-day cycle and how to align not only the things that you're eating, but the ways that you're living with your inner world. And not everyone has a 28-day cycle, everyone's unique. And I think that that's what makes us also so special, but that's what makes it so difficult for us to live in a life with other people that is within our own rhythms. We live in a 24-hour day, which is a circadian rhythm, and our 9 to 5, our typical working business hours, if you will, or office hours, are aligned with the circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is something that men and women both experience. We have those inner worlds and rhythms, which is why when you don't get a good night's sleep, you're not feeling your best. When you're seeing a lot of blue light or exposed to a lot of blue light, or if you're somebody that works a night shift and you're up when it's dark, it's just going to be counterintuitive to how we naturally exist in the world as people. But not only do women have the circadian rhythm to live by, we also have our infradian rhythm to live by, which is more so the moon and the longer seasons. And we can't really be super attuned to that when we're living in a world that is forcing us to conform under one rhythm that we have and is centered around men. The circadian rhythm is pretty easy to remember because it's every single day and super repetitive. We watch the clock all the time. Most of our lives are dictated by the 24-hour clock. We're really hypersensitive. Oh my gosh, am I going to be able to get 8 hours of sleep tonight? Is it only 7? I have to get up at this time. I have to be at work at this time. This is the appointment. I'm meeting my friends here. So we're always really looking at the clock and the months, not so much. It's easy to get so caught up in the details of time day to day that 5 days can go by and you're like, wow, okay, I wasn't really paying attention to the energy shift throughout those 5 days because I was so hyper focused on what I was doing day to day. It's really difficult to zoom out when we're so zoomed in and expected to be so hyper productive. And that's why it's really important for women to not only center themselves, but center their rhythm and be paying attention to the zooming out, making an intentional choice to zoom out, to notice where the moon is at, notice where you're at within your cycle, and it can become so much easier to use the moon as a reference point. And I know for me, it can change over time. If I'm spending time with someone, my cycle is going to most likely sync to the people that I'm around, and the moon isn't always an exact replica of what your points in your cycle are, but it is a good thing to start paying attention to because, at least for me, I know that around the full moon, I am hypersensitive. Full moons to me are like the most intense energy, and new moons, not so much, but at the polar ends of a new moon and a full moon, I really can feel the energy. So, noticing, okay, what's going on with me? And not that you have to be super into astrology or anything, but the tides are quite literally dictated by the moon, and they're water, and we're mostly water. So it would be foolish to think that our bodies are not going to have, the moon isn't going to have an influence on our bodies. And I think that this is going to require effort. It's not something that's super easy to do, but I think for me, I have carved out a routine of doing morning pages every single morning, 3 pages. And if you're not familiar, the artist's way is where a lot of people adopt this practice, and that's where I adopted the practice as well. And it's a time that you can really sit with yourself and be with yourself and jot down anything that's going on in your mind, things that you want to explore more, things that you want to research, things that are, taking up so much of your mental load, interpersonal relationship conflicts, work conflicts, anything under the sun and the moon can go in these pages. And it's really just a good opportunity to connect with yourself. And so, if wanting to get more aligned with the moon and your cycle is something that you want to do, I definitely recommend habit stacking with something like a morning pages. And even if you don't do it in the morning, maybe you do it in the evening, maybe you do it on your lunch break, maybe you do it sometime throughout the day where you feel like you have a moment to yourself because it's important. You're important. Prioritizing your needs is important. And that's something that we do in self-centered is recognizing that you can be the focal point and that doesn't make you a bad person. Being selfish under the, modern context of it can be perceived as bad, but from my perspective, I think that being selfish is the best thing that you could do for yourself because you're gonna be more productive. Not that productivity is the goal. I think that, of course, we want to have the best use of our time so we can use the rest of our time doing the things that we enjoy. But when you are most productive, you are able to increase your pleasure. You're able to become more efficient in the things that you don't really want to be doing. You're aligning your energies so that you can get those things done, and then you can seek pleasure outside of that. I just posted another video on TikTok talking about some of the things that felt like cheat codes in my life, and cycle syncing was one of them. because of this reason, not only do I feel like it's a superpower and I'm tapped into this sense of magic when things just feel like they're in the flow. I mean, nobody likes to feel like they're swimming upstream all the time. Of course, having a little bit of resistance in life, having intentional friction makes things worth having. Like the hard work makes us feel like, okay, yeah, we got this, we overcame this, we climbed up the mountain. But at the same time, you don't always want to feel like you're swimming upstream. You want to feel like you're in the flow. You want to feel like things are going your way. You want to feel lucky. You want to feel like the universe is working in your favor. And when you are aligned with your cycle, it begins to feel that way more often. I'm not saying that the answer to all of your desires is going to be fulfilled when you're aligned with your cycle, but I think that there's more reason for the universe to throw serendipitous moments your way is when you're aligned with your cycle. So, an easy way to start implementing syncing and language around cycle syncing and being more in tune with your rhythms and your flow is to think of the phases of your cycle similar to the seasons that we experience throughout the year. So, starting off, we'll start with the follicular phase. Your follicular phase is your inner spring, thinking about what are some of the things that are happening in nature during springtime that could be parallel to what is happening within you energetically during your follicular phase. Your ovulation phase would mimic inner summer. So, again, thinking about things that are happening during summer is similar to what is happening for you during ovulation. You know, you're trying to go out and you're excited and your energy is really high and you want to connect. And that's the time, you know, that if you were to mate with someone, then you could potentially become pregnant and procreate. Those feelings of excitement and high is what's happening for most people during summer. You know, I mean, our society and our culture doesn't necessarily honor it as much as, let's say, European culture. A lot of people that live in Italy, they stop working for the summer and they go to their summer vacation homes. I think about France. French people are very into this. They stop working for several weeks throughout the summer so that they can just go and enjoy and seek pleasure. Your luteal phase would be your inner fall, slowing down, the weather's changing. What are some of the things you're going inward? You're still celebrating, but not so much. You're really transitioning into that inward movement. And then your menstrual phase during the times that you are bleeding or would be bleeding if you weren't on birth control would be menstrual phase inner winter. And for me, I like to be warm and cozy and reflective and thinking about the things that I maybe want to do when the springtime comes around, but it's just not time yet, and not doing things prematurely. So for me, that's a really easy way to start thinking about it. I know we don't necessarily live amongst our seasons within our culture as well, which is really unfortunate. And I think that is directly tied to the fact that we don't honor a woman's menstrual cycle or people who have a menstrual cycle. We just don't honor them because we're going against nature. Much of our culture these days is very, very anti natural rhythms because it keeps people in a state of fight or flight rather than attunement to reality or the natural world, if you will. Like thinking about animals live very much in tune with nature. Thinking about bears who go into hibernation during winter, or squirrels that are going out and seeking their nuts, but then when it's winter, they start to behave differently, or they're preparing for when it's winter time because they know they might not be able to have access to as much food. And if we, as people who have cycles, began to start living that way, then we would stop feeling so resistant. It would be that missing piece. We would be unlocking the power within us to just be attuned to our environment. It makes me think about the concept of zoochosis, and I think a lot of people, again, under capitalism in the modern context, are experiencing zoochosis. And if you're not familiar with what zoochosis is, it's a phenomenon that is kind of perceived in animals that are under zoo captivity. They are taken out of their natural environments, they're placed in these captive situations, and then they begin to show signs of depression or just really unnatural behavior that isn't expressed in the wild. And I do not think that this is exclusive to just zoo animals. I think much of humanity are living within rhythms that are not natural to us, and therefore we see a lot of increases in mental health issues, depression, anxiety. We're being forced to exist in ways that are just not the ways that our bodies were designed to. And when you start aligning with your cycle, even within the confinements of our current culture, it can be an unlocking personal power moment. You can start to feel like you have a little bit of control over yourself. And not that your cycle is something to be controlled, it's something to be aligned to, but it makes you feel like you have this grasp on something magical that no one can take away from you, even within the confinements of needing to go to a 9 to 5 or having all of these responsibilities under your belt. If you have the ability and the awareness around your own body, that's not something that anyone can take away from you. And of course, you don't have to do this loudly. As someone who does exist very loudly, I share a lot of what I go through online and with the people in my personal life. Doing things like this doesn't require you to put a name to it to other people. You can be silently tracking your cycle during your morning pages or in your journal or in your phone. I know oftentimes now women and people who have a menstrual cycle are a little bit skeptical of some of the bio data that is being extracted from us through apps. I mean, we're being surveillanced all the time, and understandably so. People don't want to be giving any more information than they have to. I just saw a TikTok video talking about how Walmart is asking for consent to start tracking menstrual products that people are buying or baby products that people are buying. And I think that it is a scary time in a post-Roe world where we are losing our bodily autonomy. And so our purchasing decisions or even, tracking our cycles on apps can put us at higher risk of being taken advantage of from a government perspective and obviously from a corporate perspective because they are now one and the same. So, like I said, you don't have to do this loudly. You don't even have to do this with a lot of tools. It does not require that much other than your attention and care to your body. It really is a reclamation of yourself. It is a gesture of self-love to invest the attention back into you and to acknowledge, okay, yes, I do live in this world that isn't designed for me. It really isn't. As women, we are so ostracized from having the luxury of having our everyday lives be constructed around our biological rhythms. However, that doesn't mean that we don't have any kind of power over ourselves. And that is why I highly recommend that women start tracking their cycle. Even just writing it down, writing down your symptoms. Of course, it can be so easy to want to use apps that are AI driven and algorithm driven and can put it all together and you can plug it in and use ChatGPT and you can do all of those things if those are the things that make you feel most comfortable. But it can really start with just writing things down. Craving lots of carbs today, felt like I needed a nap midday, had an extra cup of coffee, little sort of things that you can go, okay, that could be aligned with me menstruating. That could be aligned with me almost being on my period, or oh, I'm feeling really social, or I feel like I want to go on a date, or I feel like I want to connect, or I'm feeling confident in giving this presentation at work. Whatever it is, whatever these inner feelings are, try to note them and see if there's a rhythmic pattern. For me, that was what was really telling is I used to think that there was something wrong with my mind. I thought it was a mental health issue to be like, wow, I really get a lot of these ideas and then I crash. I'd try to do everything all at once and have this perfectionist mindset that I'm all in, and then I crash and I burn out. And I came to recognize, well, that's because I'm going through my cycle. Not everything can be mimicked day in and day out. We are not men. Men wake up and they have the same hormone levels every single day. I think about this with working out. Men wake up, they have their unless they have a hormone discrepancy. They wake up, they know that their levels of testosterone are going to be pretty predictable from each day that goes by. And so they go to the gym and they never really have to worry about being at a different hormonal place in their bodies. Women, that's different. Yes, consistency is key, but maybe we shouldn't be doing high intensity cardio when we're on our menstrual cycle or the part of our cycle where we're menstruating or our luteal phase. Maybe high intensity is better left for your follicular and luteal phases. And so I think it could be so easy to beat ourselves up on why can't I exist the way that men exist? Why can't I exist the way that society kind of says that I'm supposed to exist? And it's simply just because we're biologically different in that way. I know that that can kind of rub people the wrong way or can lead down a pipeline of being a turf and be trans exclusionary, and that's not the case at all. I think that even tracking your cycle as a trans woman, you might not menstruate, you're not going to have a period, but that's not to say that you can't track your inner energy with that of the moon and align your desires and your abilities to that of the moon cycle, and having that intentionality to be like, okay, it's the full moon, that's time to put things into practice, that's time to manifest things, or the new moon, it's clearing out and changing gears. You can do all of those things even if you're not actually menstruating. Of course, it's going to be so much more intense for the people that are actually having a period and whose hormones are changing on a day-to-day basis. For the most part, our hormones, my hormones 3 days ago, are most likely different than they are today because I'm shifting into different seasons of my cycle. For me personally, I am heading into my luteal phase and then my menstrual phase. And so I think, what can I do with that information? And for me, it's talk to you. It's talk to you while I am alone by myself with my thoughts. And so maybe that's going to be different when I start hosting the book club and I'm having conversations with people and we're engaging with one another. So just figuring out and carving aside the things in your daily life that you can do that are aligned. A lot of this can be done with diet as well. Foods that are grounding and rooted in the earth might be better during your luteal and menstrual phases. Lighter foods, things that are not going to have as much of a carb heavy intensity during your follicular and ovulation phase, might make the most sense. It makes me think about the conversation that is happening on TikTok and, of course, on Red Note as well, where women and maybe women that are in relationships with men are starting to say, okay, I'm going to start making you a steak right before you're about to be on your period, or you're shifting from your luteal phase into your menstrual phase, and I know that you need to increase your levels of iron because not only are you burning more calories during your period, your iron levels are something that should be taken into consideration. And so women are really starting to implement even the smallest practice that makes their life better. I think about it from the perspective of tea. I'm not someone that drinks a lot of coffee, caffeine, I'm really sensitive to, but I really, really like tea. And so I like to have raspberry leaf tea around my period, and I might even have it closer to my luteal phase. And if I feel like it's necessary and helping me, I'll just have it throughout my cycle altogether. But mostly having the tools and support with both nutrition and energy levels, relationship levels that align with what I need, because I do require more when I'm in my luteal and menstrual phases. I require people to understand that my energy shifts, that I, like to slow down. I like to take Epsom salt baths, and I wrote about this in my Substack article talking about just how to be more aligned. And when I was going through my double jaw surgery, I wasn't able to actually pick a date that was more aligned with my follicular and ovulation phase, because if that were the case, I might have had an easier couple days, first couple days of healing if I was during my follicular or ovulation phase, but that wasn't the case. So I was on my period, unfortunately, like 3 or 4 days after I had my double jaw surgery. And so you can only imagine, I can't eat, I'm so swollen, I'm in discomfort, and now I'm on my period and having cramps. And so I had to express to my surgeon, hey, I'm going through this. This is where I'm currently at. I usually take Epsom salt baths to help, and magnesium and these sorts of things. And he cleared me for being able to take Epsom salt baths, which was really fortunate for me because it helped significantly. And if you're not familiar too, when you're on your menstrual part of your phase, that part of your cycle, you feel pain more intensely. So I thought about this often. I am someone that has a lot of tattoos. I plan to get more tattoos, and sometimes my tattoos would feel like they were so much more intense. Like, wow, why is this hurting so badly? I have a pretty high pain tolerance, and then I come to realize, oh, it's because I'm actually on my period. I should plan these appointments more so during my follicular and ovulation phases so that the pain isn't as intense. I mean, the woman biologically is able to forget pain. The brain does that on purpose because it incentivizes us to continue to have children, even though childbirth can be extremely painful. But if you are aware that, okay, I'm going to get laser hair removal or electrolysis, or I'm going to go through a surgery, if you can plan it to be more so in your follicular ovulation phase, you might have a more comfortable experience. And I think that is an act of revolutionary defiance, is to just seek out comfort. Oftentimes, we as women are supposed to feel small or supposed to make ourselves uncomfortable for other people to be comfortable. And so not demanding in a snarky, unempathetic way of being comfortable, doing it so that you are at the center. Your needs are met, and therefore you can love other people better. Boundaries around your body are something that I will never, ever, ever apologize for. And the people that love you are going to want you to be comfortable. It's rewiring not only our brains, but the brains of the people that are in our life simply by existing as a role model. I think about it so often that if I had role models in my life that were women that were living their lives by their cycles, that had their, biology at the center and their experiences at the center, then maybe some of the life lessons that I have had to endure, I could have skipped a step and had closer self actualization to things that were unique to me. But oftentimes, talking about your period is taboo, or talking about money is taboo. And so I really want to break down those barriers that talking about your period is not taboo in the slightest. I don't think aligning ourselves will make us more comfortable and more healthy. That will never be something that I will want to silence. So I'm curious to know what your take on cycle syncing is. What are some of the things that you do in your own personal life to make you feel more comfortable? Like I said, some of the things for me are eating more red meat closer to my menstrual cycle, taking Epsom salt baths, taking some magnesium, having raspberry leaf tea, or being social during the inner spring and inner summer parts of my cycle. Everyone is different, and everyone's experience and comfort levels, pleasure seeking is all going to look very different. I'm really curious. I'm always so curious about what people do in their own personal lives because, maybe what I do, someone else doesn't do yet, and they do it and it becomes more comfortable. Or when someone shares with me what they do, I think, oh wow, I've never thought of that before. Let me try that in my own life and see if it works. A lot of this is experimenting. A lot of this is trial and error and figuring out what works because we don't have the blueprint. We don't have the circadian rhythm structure blueprint like we do for a corporate 9 to 5. That's what you do. That's what you're supposed to do if you pursue, I guess, that sort of job. But for women, we're more so off the beaten path, similar to people who don't go into corporate or don't work a 9 to 5 shift, or overnight workers, or early morning workers. Those sorts of things, it's all about trial and error, and I think sharing with each other. I know that when I talk to my girlfriends are so knowledgeable. They're so smart and so knowledgeable. And so sometimes when I'm sharing an issue that I'm having, or, I'm noticing a change in my body and I share it with one of my girlfriends, she's like, oh, wow, I have experienced that before. Here's what I did. You should try that and see if it works. And then you can try it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, on to the next plan. So I think that just sharing our information and access to what works and doesn't work is really the first step. And then, of course, our bodies change throughout the course of our life. Our cycles change in the same way that our taste buds are renewed every 7 years or whatever it is. And so it's all about just being open and being aware of those changes as they happen. So, like I said, let me know what some of the things that you do are. If you want to start and this is something that you don't already incorporate into your life, I highly recommend the book In the Flow. I'll put it in the episode description. And if this is something that you want to do alongside other people, please join the book club Self Centered. We start on July 29th. That is the first container. This is going to be only 10 founding members at a rate that will never be this low again. This is mostly to get acclimated, to get some feedback on how the book club went, what books we should actually include, and it's a 6 week intensive. So it's 4 books, 6 weeks, and something that is going to radically change the course of your life. I know that for me, things happen more rapidly when I'm doing them around other people. And it really is your own inner investment to yourself, and it can be really scary to start to center yourself when you're so used to a world that is patriarchally driven and we're not really at the center. But being at the center becomes easier to do when you're around other women who are putting themselves at the center, because then you can talk about things that are working, things that are not working, things that are scary, things that boost confidence. I think having a community will never not be the medicine. It will always, always, always be what makes us all better. And that's not something that we have the luxury of prioritizing in our culture. We're such an individualistic type culture. So building intentional community, even if it's just in the digital space, even if it's just in a little book club, even if it's just with a few girlfriends, it really does make all the difference. So I really do hope to see you in Self Centered on July 29th. And if not, follow me on TikTok for more daily information. I'm also posting regularly on YouTube and regularly on Substack. Where you get the most saturated source of information is definitely in the book club because we can talk in the comments all day long and post videos on some of the things that you're most interested in, but it really is a direct form of communication and conversation in book club. And I always think about it where healing and growth is a two-way street. So anytime you invest and engage with me, I am growing and expanding, and I am so honored to be able to do this alongside of you and grateful to have you here. And any of the insights that you provide into this community are so invaluable to me. And I couldn't be happier that this is the direction of my life. So I will see you next time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.